Good evening and welcome to the webinar, and thank you all for joining us. You can also join in online on Twitter at Morgan McKinley using the hashtags CareerAlly and ACA Webinar. That's hashtag CareerAlly and hashtag ACA Webinar. This evening's webinar is aimed at providing you with information on the variety of job roles and the career paths available following on from the completion of your ACA exams. As experts in financial recruitment, we've put together this webinar to guide you through the many options available to you as newly qualified accountants so that you can make an informed decision on your next move. This evening's webinar will give you a brief overview of areas and roles across professional services, commerce and industry and financial services that are available to newly qualified ACAs. You should see an agenda on screen now with the details of who will be covering which area. Our presentation will last approximately 30 minutes, and following this we will take time to answer any questions that you may have. If you have any questions for us, then please type them in as we go along, and we will answer as many questions as we can during our Q&A session at the end, following on from the presentation. If we do run out of time, then we will come back to you all individually with regards to your questions, but rest assured all your questions will be answered. So we'll kick off the webinar with professional services, which is an area that I cover. So let me take this opportunity to formally introduce myself. I'm Nick Niku. I'm a consultant on the public practice team, and I specialise in recruiting roles within audit and assurance into accountancy firms. And now this is the area that probably most of you are familiar with, as the majority of you will be working in practice at the moment. Now, continuing a career within practice offers a chance to gain specialist skills, seize management experience early on, and have the chance to access international opportunities. Reaching a senior level role in practice is ultimately the most commercial role you can do, as you will be effectively running your own business. So the traditional career progression, as you can see, is from senior, moving up to manager, senior manager, director, and then on to partnership. Now, progression through these levels can give experience of managing large teams, as well as being involved in developing junior and senior members of staff. A returning client base combined with sector-specific technical training allows audit professionals to develop real sector expertise too. As we will learn later in the webinar, top corporate businesses often look to the top accountancy firms where individuals would have gained a certain industry specialism. If you qualified with a Big Four firm, options within practice could include moving to another specialism within audit or perhaps another area of the firm. More will be discussed later on in the webinar. Experience gained within a Big Four is often viewed upon keenly by smaller firms and can offer opportunities to progress quicker into management position within a smaller firm. For those who have qualified with outside of the Big Four, moving to a Big Four or top tier firm can give access to first-class training and exposure to leading larger audit teams. It can also give specialist sector expertise with access to large multinational clients, adding strong brands to your CV. Now, for those of you who have qualified with a mid-tier independent firm, can gain unprecedented experience in a move to a larger firm, gaining commercial skills in working with larger businesses as well as management of larger teams. Many newly qualified ACAs look to make a move out of practice quickly upon qualifying. However, now staying within practice after qualification can be a strategic move if you're looking to progress your career quickly. The practice market is currently facing an aging partner base and the shortage of strong managers, leaving paths open for those qualifying over the next few years to grab fast-track progression plans to partnership, often offering six-figure salaries and a stake in a growing business. Staying in practice after qualification can also be a strategic move for those considering a move into industry in the future. So shown on the screen now is a simplified diagram showing the options of a route out of practice. Planned and logical moves within practice is one way to ensure that you're equipped with the necessary skills and experience to make that move to another industry. Within audit, there are a number of industry specialisms as listed on the screen now. So we are now seeing a huge increase in the demand for specialist experience and knowledge in these areas, and this has come as a result of a number of firms winning new and lucrative contracts in a number of new areas, resulting in a need to grow these teams. At the moment, two areas that are really booming are financial services and insurance, while there is also steady growth in the not-for-profit sector. Within the larger firms, there are also options of moving out of assurance and into other linked divisions. Shown on the screen now is a breakdown of advisory, often seen as a very popular area for a newly qualified ACA. Areas within advisory include corporate finance, lead advisory covering mergers and acquisitions, private equity advisory, and initial public offering work. Transaction services include roles covering financial due diligence, buy-side and sell-side, corporate and market due diligence, post-deal services, structuring, valuations and bid support. The forensics team will cover forensic accounting, litigation and commercial disputes, expert witness work, as well as roles involved in financial crime and fraud and investigation. Corporate recovery includes restructuring and recovery, insolvency and liquidations. Risk advisory services cover commercial and contract risks, cost of controls, internal audit and information security. Now, whilst these roles do exist within practice, it must be said that these types of roles are extremely rare. However, having said that, we have seen an increase in the last 3 months of the volume of these types of roles. These types of vacancies are extremely competitive, and in order to secure a role within advisory, you would need strong academics and a very good, if not perfect, exam record, and have qualified in a mid-tier or top-tier firm. So that's a brief overview of the professional services market. I will now pass you over to Marcus, who will run through the options available in investment management.
Yes, thanks Nick. Hi there everybody. My name is Marcus Williams and I'm team leader on the investment management finance desk. We recruit newly qualified accountants up to FD level positions in 3 key areas: investment management, hedge funds and private equity. Generally our largest organisations that we work with are those sitting within the investment management space, and hedge funds and private equity firms are normally ranging from fairly smaller to medium-sized finance teams. This slide gives you an idea of some of the household names we recruit for in our key markets. As you will see, BlackRock on the slide are industry leaders within the investment management space, managing 4.5 trillion worth of assets. Recently we have assisted the finance team in BlackRock on a number of vacancies whereby the hiring manager has requested to see newly qualified ACA accountants to join their commercial financial planning and analysis teams. Man Group, you'll also see there, are a leading hedge fund, and they are placed on the FTSE 250 and have a very large footprint across the globe. Recently, they have acquired 2 new organisations and are showing real determination to expand in the market. We have assisted these guys with a more technical accounting type of positions, such as legal entity and financial accounting positions. KKR are a multinational private equity firm who are based in Green Park, and they've got headquarters in the US. They are known as one of the big powerhouses in the private equity sector, and they invest in real estate, energy, healthcare and technology. In the past, the hiring managers of KKR have asked to meet with candidates who have a real appetite for a broad exposure in their roles and the willingness to learn a number of key areas within the finance function. So this slide provides like an overview of some of the reasons why you should choose a career within the investment management space. Firstly, investment firms tend to have smaller finance teams than larger investment banks, allowing you to gain a broader skill set in your role. Smaller finance teams offer increased visibility with senior stakeholders, and it is common that you would be sitting with the decision makers of the business. The organisations in general are less hierarchical than other financial service institutions, which can sometimes prevent a lot of office politics internally. If you're not worried about having a fancy corporate title, then investment management could be a good shout for you. If you would like to work in a fast-paced environment and keen to get face time with those sitting in the front office, you may want to look into the world of hedge funds, who offer cross-asset exposure and also the interaction with the front office desk. If you like the more entrepreneurial sort of approach, you may want to consider opportunities in the private equity markets where again you will be part of smaller finance teams and have the exposure to CFOs and the investment teams. Having exposure to the investors can provide you with a clear insight into where your work is adding value in the business and also the contribution you're making to the team. This slide shows an example of a typical finance org chart that is most commonly seen within an investment management firm. When qualifying as an ACA, I personally think it's important to understand where your strengths lie and what your competitive edges over your colleagues. For some, this may be your commercial skill sets, individuals that are confident communicators with an analytical mindset and comfortable with maintaining senior stakeholder relationships may want to consider the FP&A and more management accounting routes. This is an area of finance where the budgeting, the forecasting takes place, more forward-looking responsibilities to determine the future position of the business. The natural progression for this type of individual who chooses this route will be to step into a similar but more senior position, looking after a number of distribution networks and potentially managing a small team, gaining, again, further exposure to senior stakeholders. You may also want to consider developing your skill set in a finance manager position. This finance manager position would offer you the opportunity to pick up additional skills and allow you to become a more rounded accountant. So in essence, you would gain more technical accounting experience such as financial accounting and set you up nicely for the next step in your career to becoming a financial controller. On the other hand, if you enjoy the more technical side of accounting, such as understanding of new sort of financial reporting standards, your UK GAAP and IFRS, and how they affect the business, then the financial accounting route could be more suited to you. In this role, you can expect to be part of a team that produces reports through consolidating financial results on the current state of the business and their different entities. If you're keen to gain fund exposure and a deep understanding of alternative investments, then fund accounting should be considered. You can expect to be calculating the net asset values for a portfolio of funds in this position and also producing reports to the investors. This type of position can be seen within a private equity firm, a hedge fund, and also a large investment management firm. Whichever side of the organisational chart you choose, once you have developed a broad skill set and gained a number of years in the industry, you can start then to really push on in your career and take further ownership of your team and overall responsibility of the finance function. These types of controller or financial director roles are normally quicker to get in a boutique organisation purely because of the smaller sizes of the teams. If you're looking to become a head of department or a specialist in your area, you may then want to decide choosing a larger organisation and be a head of a department. So that's it from me. Thanks for listening. I'll now pass you over to my colleague Afino, who will be giving a talk on opportunities within investment banking.
Thank you, Marcus. Good evening, all. My name is Afino Janius, and I recruit all finance roles across the banking sector. Much like my colleagues, I will today give you some insight into what it's like to work in the industry and the different roles that are on offer to a newly qualified accountant currently. As you will see on the screen currently, that is a list of some of the clients that we cover currently. To clarify, we don't only cover investment banking clients, but also group, commercial, retail, and even card divisions of some of these well-known institutions. I'll try and give you an idea of what it's like to work in these institutions and the career path that can be expected and followed when joining as a newly qualified accountant from practice. In most cases, we are dealing with large businesses where the career paths are clearly defined, but in general, you will join a bank as an analyst or associate, move to an AVP level position, which stands for Assistant Vice President, following that to a VP, which is Vice President, then Director of the space. From the slides, you will see what this industry can provide for you, like a clear career path and progression, which I've just discussed, and the opportunity to work in a dynamic yet challenging environment. The majority of roles we cover are middle office aligned, but some do have good front office exposure and dealings with the business, which will ultimately increase your chances of dealing with senior stakeholders across the board. This brings me onto the next slide and follows on from discussing more specifically the roles that we recruit for within finance and banking. Financial accounting. These roles will already utilize the technical skills that you have developed within audit. They are primarily focused on the production of financial statements and putting together statutory accounts. I've indicated some key elements to these roles on the slide. Management accountants. The management accountant role gives an overall picture of the business on a monthly basis and provides an indication of where the business is in comparison to where it was forecast to be. Product control. It is a key department in controlling the business of the bank. taking ownership and responsibility for solving processing and valuation problems to escalate issues to traders where appropriate. It is key to take ownership for guaranteeing how valid the underlying corporate data is by checking all trading, lending, and funding transactions flow from the front office and operation divisions using the P&L process as a tool to achieve this across various asset classes within the bank. Regulatory reporting is a growing space and is key to any bank's infrastructure. It has become a key in recent times and governs the work that is signed off and approved. Regulatory reports are collated for many purposes: monitoring safety and soundness of individual legal entity level, monitoring systematic risk in banking and financial systems, monetary policy, cross-border flows, and compliance. Project business analyst roles. We have a dedicated team that specializes in this space now, as the appetite in this area has increased in the last 12 to 18 months for project applicants who are keen to make a career within this space. These roles are in general based around project life cycles, system implementation, and business requirements over a set period. Now more than ever, it is very competitive to get into these areas within banking. I would therefore say that you need to come from ideally a Big Four environment working within banking capital markets, or have some dealings with financial services clients, for example, banking or investment management, coupled with first-time passes with your ACA and a very strong academic background. That's it for me and finance into banking. I'll pass you over to my colleague, Andrew Kitchen.
Right, good evening all. My name's Andy Kitchen. I manage our internal audit team here at Morgan McKinley. I'm going to talk you through some of the options available to you both on the banking side of things but also within commerce and industry. Look, I've recruited into audit for almost 10 years now, and perhaps one of the most noticeable trends at a newly qualified level is that lack of understanding as to actually what constitutes internal audit. And it's certainly not the tick and bash world of external audit that you'll be familiar with so far. In fairness, it cannot be more different. It's a fairly high-level, high-profile function. It aligns itself with the overall strategy of a business and positively impacts on company performance. Now, depending on which area you move into, there can be little or no financial statement audit involved at all. So what is internal audit? Well, the scope of audit is fairly broad. The main objective, though, is to ensure that an organisation has a disciplined approach to improving the effectiveness of risk management, control and governance processes. So you might look at efficiency or effectiveness of operations, the reliability of financial and management reporting, compliance with laws and regulations, or fraud audits to identify potentially fraudulent acts. It can certainly be a great first move into the banking sector and offers you senior stakeholder engagement from the outset, something that actually very few other roles will offer. Now, given this exposure to senior management and the commercial awareness gained from a role in internal audit, it can actually act as a talent pool for other areas or functions within the bank. From experience, I can say that internal mobility for internal auditors is exceptionally strong. To give you an idea, if we look at HSBC, their CEO for Japan, their head of trade control, their head of business regulatory change, and their head of offshore strategy all started their careers in internal audit. The last point on the slide relates to travel, something that comes up a lot with internal audit, and this varies considerably from function to function and even from bank to bank. It can range from as little as 0% through to about 60%. So for those of you keen to do an element of international travel, the option is definitely there. Okay, if we look at the kinds of roles that you could do within internal audit and the different functions, we'll start off with business audit. So business audit role focuses on financial markets and will be investment banking orientated. You'll gain lots of exposure to investment banking products such as fixed income, rates, equities and commodities. It is, though, a technical role, and you will need to have prior experience of working alongside a front office environment and have a strong grasp of various asset classes. Second up, we look at risk audit. It sits very closely to the front office auditors, and again, it's a very technical role. It's actually for newly qualified accountants a low volume hiring position. The role will give you exposure to the likes of market risk, credit risk, operational risk, and also quants. But owing to the technical nature of these roles, a numeric degree is necessary. Compliance audit. Well, this is actually one of the most topical areas in internal audit at present, and focuses on areas such as anti-money laundering, financial crime, KYC, and regulatory advice. Prior experience of fraud or forensic audit and or regulatory compliance is certainly beneficial. IT audit, well, this is generally split into two areas, applications audit and infrastructure audit. Applications more aligned to the business side and infrastructure more aligned to the system side of things, and therefore a little bit more technical. IT audit is and always has been in quite high demand, and as a result can also be quite well paid. They will, however, typically need you to have the CISA qualification on top of your ACA, and certainly for the applications audit positions, you'll need to have a good understanding of core market products as well. Lastly, we look at corporate or retail banking audit. These roles typically sit within the main universal banks, and is an excellent entry into the banking sector, occasionally needing little or no prior FS experience. The roles are typically a little more generalist in nature, but consequently provide great exposure to key areas of a bank. They do, however, involve the most amount of travel, often around 40 to 50% of your time. That's kind of it from the banking side of things, but I want to quickly address now the internal audit within commerce. So whilst the nature of the work is fairly similar, most organizations simply don't have the capacity or the resources to split audit teams according to a specific specialization. Instead, you'll find the audit teams are quite generalist in nature, covering both financial and operational audit. The work will therefore be quite varied. For example, you could be reviewing the processes and procedures in accounts payable one week, and then assessing risks to controls in buying or procurement, or even the HR and marketing departments the next week. Compared to other newly qualified roles in commerce and industry, personally I don't think there's any other role which will provide such a broad exposure to a business, from their strategy and operations through to governance and financial control. So typical audits could be process review, we could look at risk management, due diligence, cost-cutting reviews, fraud review, as well as compliance and controls related activities. As I said before, it can have an international remit. Travel tends to be a little higher here than within the banks, typically around 50%. So what that really means is probably a week of planning the audit, 2 weeks on site doing the field work, and a week of reporting. Now, if you do have a second language, and more importantly, if you want to use that second language, it'll certainly be useful here, although I will add that it's not essential to have that language skill. Finally, just reiterate, I mentioned earlier about internal mobility. Within commerce, the role of an internal auditor is often referred to as a window shopping role or as a pass-through. It offers insight and exposure to the whole business, which if you're unsure as to what area or department you want to move into now, it'll give you that opportunity to explore those various departments. Typically, accountants are recruited into audit with a view to move into other areas of the business within a 24-month period. Hope that helps. I'm going to pass you through to my colleague Ashley Crouch to talk you through other options available within commerce and industry.
Good evening all, my name is Ashley Crouch. I manage the team that recruit qualified level permanent roles in commerce and industry and the not-for-profit sectors. Initially, I'd like to talk you through some of the roles available to you within the broader industry area. You'll notice the vast difference in responsibilities. These roles are predominantly internally facing and involve reporting on key financials, analysing information for decision making, and business as usual roles that are traditionally known as operational finance. If we move through to the next slide, I've actually listed a few examples that I can talk you through. I've put half a dozen key responsibilities for each role on the slide, but thought it might be better to talk you through from a high-level perspective on what each role actually does. So initially, the group accountant, as the name suggests, this role is found within organisations that contain a group structure. The role itself usually badged as a technical role in such that it doesn't have any impact on the commercial performance of the business. What it actually does is bring together, effectively consolidate, a number of divisions, business units, entities, and provide a consolidated view. The role is usually found in large businesses. Next up, financial accountant. Using factual data based on prior events, this role focuses on producing a set of accounts that reflect the performance of the business to date. This is often the role that produces the numbers that the group accountant would consolidate, a balance sheet driven role. Next up, management accountant. In polar opposite to the first two, this is a forward-looking role and finds its value helping the business to plan and evaluate an opportunity, operational performance requirement, or change in the business. It's vital that the management accountant understands the key business drivers and can communicate in a language non-financial folk can understand. Absolutely a forward-looking role that retains some traditional accounting within. Next up, business/financial analyst. Badged as either, the content tends to be very similar. This takes the skill set gained from the management accounting role and moves it to a more commercial standpoint. The BA or financial analyst role is often project-based and involves providing key analysis to make decisions thereon. The role doesn't really have any of the monthly accounting cycle in it and engages more with non-finance. The next slide, you should hopefully be able to see now, should give you a very brief insight into the structure of a finance function within commerce, the reporting lines and the obvious route of progression available to you. You can see the financial accounting role and the group accounting role lead into the financial controller. Badged as technical roles, this is the obvious career progression. The business analyst leads into a head of finance. This could equally be pitched as a FP&A manager or commercial finance role. The management accountant leads into the head of finance again, but slightly more on a traditional line. Hopefully this all makes sense so far. I found a few examples here to give you a few real-life cases of candidates that we've assisted in their career moves to date, and equally how it's actually worked out. I'll talk through a couple of examples in a moment, but there are a few obvious points that stand out that are well worth visiting in advance. The move from mid-tier firm to Big Four. I say mid-tier, but I actually mean within reason anything non-Big Four to a Big Four. This move often happens when the candidate is trained in a practice that doesn't have large PLC audit clients and needs to gain experience before moving into commerce. This can even see candidates moving from a top 20 practice to a Big Four firm, as in the first example. This extra move can bridge the small skill gap required to understand the differences between financial reporting and PLC reporting. So looking at the screen now, a couple of examples. The first one demonstrates a candidate moving from Crowe, Clark Whitehill through to Ernst & Young, essentially a non-Big Four to a Big Four, so that the candidate could gain extra experience auditing in a PLC environment prior to moving to Tesco. Moving further down, we could look at Louise, who trained ACA with PwC and then moved into a senior accounting role with Disney, upon which gained some commercial experience, then moved into a more commercial role, management accounting with Kurt Geiger, and has since progressed into a more commercial, international-based role. Having looked at what a move into commerce can look like, let's have a quick review of some of the brands that we actually work with in my area and what sort of roles they hire ACA first movers into. These businesses have placed, well, we've placed effectively newly qualified ACAs within these businesses in the last 12 months or so, as an example. It's worth noting here that a few of the clients actually make this move into commerce like another graduate scheme, where there's an element of a rotation scheme to gain experience in different areas. A great example of this would be Arcadia. Newly qualified ACAs go in as initially a central cost finance manager, looking at key cost drivers in the business before moving into a role badged as retail finance manager, and then latterly a role badged as buying and merchandising. As you progress through the roles, your experience becomes more commercial and more interesting, typically to candidates. Tesco and John Lewis offer very similar programs. That's all from me. Thank you very much for attending our webinar. We hope you found it very informative. I'll now hand you back over to my colleague Nick, who will coordinate any questions.
So yeah, we hope you found all the information very helpful, and hopefully you're now in a better position to understand some of the options that are available to you on completion of your ACA. Now, if you do have any specific interests or would like to have a further conversation about anything specific at all, please do get in touch with one of the consultants here, whoever's more relevant for your query. All the information now can be found on the screen, so as I said, whichever consultant you feel is best for your query, please do get in touch with them. Now, we've had a number of really good questions actually, so we will just go through those. As I said, what we'll try and do is answer as many questions as we can. If we don't manage to answer your question, all we can do is apologise. Obviously, we're slightly restricted by time, but we will come back to you all individually with answers to those questions. Right, the first question. This is probably so. This one's for Nafino. So Nafino, do you cover front office or corporate finance roles in banking?
Well, that's actually a question that we get quite frequently. We don't actually cover front office roles. We had a dedicated front office team at Morgan McKinley, but in the last 12 to 18 months or so, there hasn't been an appetite to bring in straight newly qualified into these type of roles. From my standing point on this, I guess it's best that they move into or can move into a product control role or valuations control role. In this way, you're gaining good product knowledge, you're dealing with senior stakeholders in the business, and you also have that front office exposure because you're dealing with the traders on a daily basis. So that's a good stepping stone role in moving into a corporate finance front office capacity. But to answer the question, that's not something that we cover as a business.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Marcus, within the investment management space, what type of live vacancy do you currently have?
Okay, so I'd say trends at the moment, certainly what we're seeing and recruiting for, are more the commercial financial planning and analysis type of positions. Our organisations which we're working for at the moment really are looking for good technical ACAs, but at the same time looking for those sort of candidates that have the commercial aspect as well, people that like to face off to senior stakeholders, candidates that like to sort of have an analytical sort of mindset, but also not only be able to produce the sort of, you know, the accounts and the financial results, but people who can interpret that as well. And the thing, you know, that's a sort of a skill set which is, you know, sometimes quite hard to find. But once, you know, we kind of recognise a candidate that's got good academics, a good newly qualified ACA accountant that's got some good technical skills, that now wants to take that into a more of a commercial type of position. You know, our big organisations that we're working with, you know, like a BlackRock or a Schroders, these guys are really keen to sort of meet with them. So I would say certainly it's the financial planning and analysis type of role.
Perfect. All right, thanks very much, Marcus. A question has come up. Is there anything you'd recommend that would strengthen a bid to move from audit to corporate finance within the Big Four? Now, I mean, I'm guessing that you're already in a Big Four firm. What I would suggest is, and what we've seen is, within the Big Four, a lot of these teams are quite defined. So you will have a corporate finance team, an audit team within a certain specific area, be it banking and capital markets. What I would suggest is, where possible, try and ask to get some corporate finance work, even if it's working on maybe one assignment or shadowing, you know, something within corporate finance. Probably the best way, because getting experience within corporate finance otherwise is quite difficult. However, what I would say as well, especially within the Big Four, internal transfers are really possible. And as I said, over the last 3 months, we've seen an increase in the volume in these types of roles. And these teams are now looking at people without any sort of corporate finance experience and moving straight into these teams as sort of a newly qualified doing audit. Also as well, the type of work that you're getting. So I would ask to get more sort of exposure to larger audits if you're not already, maybe some more complex work. And I think that's going to stand you in good stead to get a role within any sort of advisory position. Okay, another question that we've got here. What are the most commercial opportunities available, i.e. roles where you are closest to the business operations? That's one for Ashley, so yeah.
So the most commercial roles available are the business analyst and the financial analyst roles. Essentially these roles work with non-finance individuals and will provide the non-finance individuals information to base decisions on. So in order to perform a role like this, you actually need to have somebody who's got a broader business understanding so that they can actually challenge these people on what they're doing. They are the most difficult roles to move to as a first mover or as a newly qualified ACA due to the increased level of commerciality required. But if you've got a good pool of clients that are relevant to the sector that perhaps you want to move into, you can justify it with a good depth of experience already gained in the sector.
Fine, brilliant. Thanks very much, Ashley. Got a question here as well for Andrew. Can you please elaborate on the expected levels of travel within internal audit?
Yeah, sure. Look, companies these days seem to have got their travel elements fairly right on their job descriptions. Previously, they'd be a little bit ambitious in terms of what it really looked like. From a banking side, it will depend on which bank you look at and which area of the bank. I would say investment banking typically has the lowest travel. You look at sort of 0 to 10% within that. Something like wealth or corporate banking could be as high as 40%. That said, though, the travel will largely be to major financial cities. I don't know, you'd look at Frankfurt, New York, Hong Kong, Geneva, Singapore as typical destinations. On the commerce side of things, can vary literally from nothing through to 100%. So typically it seems to be 50%, although when a business quotes 50%, reality is they're overselling that. It will be, in truth, a bit less than that, probably closer to 40%. Generally speaking, if it's a UK listed business, the travel will be global, and if it's a US business, the travel is more likely to be the EMEA region only, as they've probably got an equivalent audit team based in the States.
Lovely, thanks very much for that. Now, I've probably got time to run through probably another couple of questions. Ashley, this is probably again more relevant for you. Is it possible for a newly qualified ACA to move into a business or financial analyst role?
Yeah, that's, I guess, leading on from the question before about how commercial and how close to the operations can they get. It is possible, but you kind of need to find some kind of leverage for it. So we tend to advise people that if you've got a specific area where you've got a depth of skill set in that is beyond just that of your audit or accounting skill set, then you've probably got more scope to do it. So as quite a clear example, if individuals have got some really good retail audit experience with some really good clients that are only small, medium and large, then we can look at slightly more commercial roles for guys like those if it's within the retail sector, on the basis that they should have a better commercial understanding of what's going on. And that equally sits quite nicely with other sectors like oil and gas. You tend to find that some of those heavy industry sectors you can move into quite an analytical role straight off the bat, because the demand for people to do roles like that is slightly more increased.
Perfect, thanks very much. And finally, and I think probably myself and Ashley can answer this one. I'm open to my next move and considering practice and industry. What could I achieve by moving to a bigger firm? Now, I think Ashley did a really good job of this actually in his presentation, in showing some of the examples of the moves that have been made. So moving from a mid-tier firm to a big four, what you're then going to do is, as I said, gain exposure to larger clients, which are going to stand out to a lot of the sort of areas that Ashley looks after within commerce and industry. Also as well, what we've seen is once people move into a larger firm, a lot of the time they can tend to stay within practice, because obviously the more sort of higher up the ladder you get, the more not enjoyable, but the more sort of responsibilities you gain, and a lot of the time we see that people do stay within practice. But as I said, I think to move into industry, if you move into a larger firm, you're going to stand in much better stead of getting a role within commerce and industry. Actually, is that something you'd agree with, or?
Yep, so to follow on from that, the skill set that you gain in a smaller practice is different to the skill set that you often gain in a larger practice as well. So, for example, if you train in a firm that provides a range of services, often somebody will actually find that they have a role that incorporates account preparation, audit, a bit of tax, a bit of advisory, a bit of all sorts, which is very well-rounded and good from a general development perspective. But if you actually want to work within a larger corporate business at the end of the day, that experience of having audited those bigger clients is kind of essential. So whilst that well-rounded experience is a good grounding to start with, you then actually find that topping that experience up and just raising the level of it by working in the Big Four on some of those larger audits means that you've completed a full skill set. So it does actually make that next move quite a lot easier, depending on the type of role you want to go to.
Fine, brilliant, thanks very much. So I think that's pretty much about all we've got time for. As I said, we've had a large number of questions come in. Apologies if we didn't get to answer your questions. As I said, we'd come back to you all individually and answer those questions. We hope you found the webinar helpful. As I said, all our details are on the screen. Should you need any further advice, we hope you found it helpful and look forward to speaking to you all soon in the future. Thanks very much.